Hello and welcome to the Fighting Spirit Podcast. As always, I'm Jason and I'm here to bring you the retrospective for UFC 251 and the fight picks for Kattar versus Ige taking place actually tomorrow. So this is a jam-packed week, so I'm sorry this one's getting out a little bit late, but we're going to hit our retrospective for Saturday. We're going to get our fight picks in for tomorrow or Wednesday, July 15th. We got a lot to talk about. Let's get into it. Here's the show. Alright, so let's start with that main event where Kamaru Usman defeated Jorge Masvidal. And in this one, Masvidal was defeated handily. At no point did he really present any real problem for Usman. Maybe it was the gas tank because later on in the later rounds, Masvidal wasn't able to surmount any real opposition to Usman's clinch work and foot stomps. I mean, that's kind of the whole tale of the tape here. We know what happened. If you watch the fight, if you've even read anything in MMA world for the last couple of days, you know what happened. There's not much more for me to say about that. But let's talk about Kamaru Usman, because I've been saying this on Twitter, and I think this is the problem for him now. He is not a guy that any casual fan that purchased UFC 251 this past weekend is going to go out and buy another pay-per-view for. Will they buy him from Masvidal? Sure. I mean, we're talking about 1.3 million pay-per-view buys. I think is the estimated amount right now. Masvidal has proven himself to be a huge draw. There's no doubt about it. His stock is still high with 6 days' notice, and I think we can all agree that Usman, talented though he may be, is not an entertaining fighter. He's a Tyron Woodley 2.0 of sorts. Usman is able to use his game, get positions that he holds the absolute advantage on, and then this is where he gets boring. Doesn't advance past that position. Usman at no point tried to close the show on Masvidal. He was content to play clinch work and do foot stomps, and even though he did shoot some takedowns, was not really effective with keeping Masvidal down, wasn't willing to try to get him down to execute a lot of ground and pound, wasn't looking for any submissions, not that that's his game. Also, wasn't really looking to strike on Masvidal, wasn't interested in having any kind of kickboxing match that could have led to a finish. Masvidal, would have been more than happy to exchange with him, but Usman just wasn't. And because he lacked the thrill of the kill, the fight IQ to go out there and finish it, keep out of the judges' scorecards, that's what makes him a boring fighter. It's not his style, it's how he executes it. If you looked over at, Khabib, Khabib Nurmagomedov, he's the ultimate ground and pound, ultimate wrestling fighter. He looks for finishes. He tries to finish the fights. Is it as interesting necessarily as a walk-off knockout like we saw with Jiri Prochazka and Volken Holloway? No, not necessarily. It's a different kind of game, and that's okay. That's why MMA is so interesting, is because you have multiple pathways to victory. But when you decide not to go down any pathway victory, that's outside of holding a guy in clinch control and foot stomping him for 60% of the contest, it's just not that great. And I don't know anybody that's going to be like, yes, I have to buy a Kamaru Usman fight in the future. I know lots of guys will go out and buy Volken Holloways, Peter Yan's, Jose Aldo's, but I don't know anybody that's going to be wanting to buy Usman's fight on his own. He's going to always need a strong B-side. He's going to always need a good co-main in order to get the sale, I believe, which is a real shame because he is a tremendous athlete. He is a great fighter, but he is not worth your dollar in terms of buying a pay-per-view. And so that's the problem with Usman. We'll see what happens going forward. Obviously, we have the Gilbert Burns fight out there. I think that's the one to make. I don't like this idea of him having to fight Leon Edwards to get the number one contender spot. I think it already was Burns, and circumstances sort of pulled him out of that. So I'd like to see Burns versus Usman next. I think that is the good fight because I don't think Usman will be able to work as much clinch work. I think Gilbert Burns would relish the idea of being in a clinch with Usman because then he can play and start working his game a little bit better. So we'll see how that one plays out in the future, but either way, Masvidal takes an L here and Usman picks up a W. We were also correct about this one. I should probably mention we were 69% accurate on the night. So we had pretty good numbers overall. We got this one correct as well. Moving on to the next one, Volkanovski Holloway. So some controversy here. I don't want to get too much into it, but I ultimately thought Volkanovski won. The third round, I think, is where everybody kind of comes down on who won, who lost. I thought that damage, and actually it turns out even strikes thrown, was to the advantage of Volkanovski, especially in the later part of the third round. I thought it closed out strong for Volkanovski, which made me give him the nod in the third. And then in rounds 4 and 5, I thought Volkanovski, especially in 5, was in cruise control, ending the fight in top position on Holloway, finally executing some of the takedowns. Volkanovski outstrikes at 137 to 102, scores 3 takedowns to Holloway 0, and Holloway, while he did get 2 knockdowns early on, they were not capitalized upon. You did not see Volkanovski catching some ground and pound from Holloway. He was popping up immediately, and while he was going down, it wasn't 10-8s, in my opinion. It was just solid 10-9s because of the rapid pace that you were able to see Volkanovski pop back up with. And so I think that this was the right call. Some people may disagree with me. We did get the fight correct on the prediction, and that's all that really matters for us. As far as what's next for these guys, I think Volkanovski taking on the winner of Zombie Ortega, and then Holloway I'm a little less sure about. I actually like the Zabit fight, though. I think that actually is a good one for him. We'll see how things play out, though. In the next one, no need for the judges in this one. We had guys show up for a title fight legit. Petr Yan take on Jose Aldo. And so in this one, Aldo I thought was breaking Yan. I thought that he was. Rounds 1 and 2, he was putting it on. He was utilizing the leg kicks. I thought he had good combinations. While Yan was strong and fast and connecting with big shots, I thought Aldo's chin was, built up big enough where it could eat those and slowly get the younger man to crumble through experience and ability. And Aldo just wasn't able to execute that. He ends up really being put out on his shield. The referee was willing to let this one go about a minute past, maybe even more than longer than it needed to be. And unfortunately, Aldo catches a real beating to close out the fight, where Petr Yan picks up a TKO in the 5th round. Up until that 5th round, though, I was, thinking it was going to be a tough fight to call. I thought Aldo could have potentially been winning on somebody's scorecard, but with the end numbers here, it certainly looks like Yan would have been your victor regardless. And so I think there would have been little controversy in this one. We also called this fight correctly. All right, moving on to the next one. One we did not get correct. Rose Namajunas and Jessica Andrade. This was a split decision. I thought that Andrade fought pretty well, but ultimately Rose did really pick up better strikes towards the end. Andrade certainly made her wear a lot of that damage that she inflicted. I think Rose actually looked like the loser in her interview when compared to the amount of damage Andrade was wearing. But ultimately, Andrade picks up a loss here for us, and Namajunas picks up a win. It'll be interesting to see how she fares, because I think they're talking about it against Weili Zhang. I think Rose is going to get the next nod there, and I'm not sure Namajunas is going to be enough to handle Zhang. That is one hell of a tough woman, and we'll see how things play out for her. But hats off to Rose Namajunas picking up a great win and a redemption victory over her last loss to Jessica Andrade. In the next one, I actually was texting my buddies about this one. Amanda Ribas taking on Paige Van Zandt. This was a fighter versus a looker, and in this one, we had to give it to Ribas all day. She goes out, picks up a very early armbar. Great transition to pick up the armbar, and a solid victory. So I think Ribas will be going back down to 115 pounds, and we'll see where things play out from there. But she is also another competitor I can certainly see challenging Zhang. Maybe not right away, but she's on her way. And the next one we got correct as well. Jerry Prochaska defeats Volkan Ozdemir. He was a fun fighter. Prochaska was coming out of the Ryzen organization. He was throwing a lot of interesting looks out there. I thought he was even trying to show Ozdemir like he was maybe overtired, over-injured, and he was just baiting him, kind of like Ion Kutaleba does. And it was very interesting. It ends up being a great walk-off knockout at 49 seconds into round number 2. Even though Ozdemir did outstrike Prochaska landed the bigger shots, and he picked up a great win with some extra performance of the night money. In the next one, Muslim Salikov defeats Elizo Selecki dos Santos, or Capoeira Santos as we call him here, or I think he's pretty much known. Anyways, he picks up a split decision loss, though. Salikov picks up the W. I didn't actually catch this fight, but Dos Equis, the most interesting man in the world, Elizo Dos Equis. No, Zaleski dos Santos picks up a loss here, even though he did score a few extra strikes. I can't comment too much on how it played out, but we picked up an L. And another L, Makwan Amirkhani does get Danny Henry to the ground and picks up an anaconda choke. I thought that Henry would have been good enough to keep Amirkhani off of him, but that was not the case. He also did not have the skills to pay the bills on the ground, and so he ended up picking up an L. In the next one, winning dick kick of the night, we had Leonardo Santos versus Roman Bogotov, and Bogotov committed some really bad fouls in this one. I believe he was docked 2 points, multiple groin strikes, a knee to a grounded opponent. It was pretty bad stuff. This was probably the worst fight of the night just because of the way it was playing out. Leonardo Santos picks up a win for us, but Roman Bogotov maybe needs some more time on the regional scene to get his shit together. You cannot be dick kicking and striking down opponents. So we pick up a win in that one, and thank God we did. Marcin Tybura, the next one, defeats Maxim Grishin, another one we called correctly. He picks up a unanimous decision. Not the most interesting fight. Very few strikes were thrown. Tybura kind of lays on him a lot, picking up takedowns throughout the fight, and picking up a solid unanimous decision victory, but nothing to write home about. Then we have Rulan Paiva defeat Zalagas Zumilov, and this one's pretty interesting. You have Zalagas connecting with more strikes and scoring takedowns, but Paiva landing more damage at this flyweight competition and ultimately picking up a win, which we did call correctly. And the last two here, Cal Rosa defeats Vanessa Miller. This was a real one-sided affair. Rosa outstriking her 120-45 and picking up 2 takedowns. We did call this one correctly. And then the last one we did not call correctly, Davey Grant defeats Martin Day. Martin Day was looking really good, this young Hawaiian product, but Grant catches him with a great solid punch in the third round and ends up picking up a win. I'm not sure that Day would have ultimately won the fight on the scorecard card, but I think it would have been at least close. I could have seen a split decision, potentially loss or win. Maybe Grant would have picked up the win overall just because he was out striking him, but either way, we didn't have to go that far because Day takes the L in the middle of the third round. So, like I said, we had a pretty good night, going 69%. Or 9-4 on the night. So again, solid for us overall. So let's go ahead and talk about this next card, though. We're gonna have Dan Ige taking on Calvin Kattar again in Abu Dhabi. Let's get into the fight picks for tomorrow. All right, so in our main event tomorrow, we are going to have Calvin Kattar taking on Dan Ige in what will be a very interesting featherweight bout. This really starts to set up who are the contenders at the upper echelons of featherweight. And so in this one, Kattar's coming off of a great win. Ige is coming off of a great win. Ige is on that 5-fight-plus win streak here. I can't go any further back than Griffin, and he just looks phenomenal right now, and so he is going to end up being the pick here. Kattar also looks good as well. He has a couple losses, Moicano, Magomed Sharapov, but that one's a little controversial in Russia, and obviously his great win over Jeremy Stephens a couple weeks ago. But in this one here, I think Ige is the better fighter. We saw his ability to outstrike somebody like Edson Barboza. He also has, I think, a better ground game. He shoots for takedowns more often, and Kattar really is just a stand-up fighter primarily. Even though his output is better than Ige's, I think that Ige has more tools in the toolkit, and I think they're a little bit sharper, and I believe he's going to have better pathways to victory. Now, all that being said, Kattar does have a bigger frame, 5'11", but only a 1-inch reach advantage, and so ultimately I got to go with a younger guy here. I'm going to go with Dan Ige. I think he gets it done in Abu Dhabi in the main event. Our next one here is going to be a flyweight matchup where Tim Elliott is taking on Ryan Benoit. Benoit. We'll go with Benoit. Anyways, in this one here, Elliott, does look like he is on the slide here. 3 losses in a row. Royval, Askarov, and Figueiredo. He doesn't have a win since De La Rosa way back when. And in this one, I think he actually gets a win. So Ryan Benoit has also proven himself to be a real hit and miss product in the UFC. And I think that Elliott does have the skills here, especially when it comes to the ground-based skills, the ability to score takedowns, the ability to stop an opponent if they are, getting the better of you on the feet. I think that's going to be a great pathway to victory here, especially since there is a small reach advantage in the case of Benoit. I think that, Elliott's going to have enough tools to, get inside if necessary for the striking, get it down to the mat when necessary. And I think that Elliott, a guy that if he really wants to fight well, a guy can challenge or once challenged Demetrius Johnson. I think that competitor still is inside of Elliott, and he can get a great win to stay on the UFC roster. If he loses again, it's not looking good, and I do not see Elliott continuing to stay on the roster. I think he's going to get bounced. I think he knows he's going to get bounced, and he knows he has to get a victory, even if it has to go to decision. He's got to win no matter what, and so I'm going to go with the guy with his back against the wall. We're picking Tim Elliott. All right, the next one here at featherweight again, we're going to have Jimmy Rivera and Cody Stamen. So in this one, we have a Tiger Schulman product in Jimmy Rivera, and we've seen Jimmy Rivera, I think, honestly, fight a little too aggressive for his own good. He's a guy that tends to overshoot, overcommit. He's a little like Jeremy Stevens. When he scores a knockout and he gets a hold of you, it's awesome, right? It's real fun, but it's honestly not the way to get to the highest level of the UFC. Think of Kamaru Usman. That boring style is a successful style. And I'm not saying everybody needs to be boring, but I am saying you cannot just look for highlight reels constantly. Doesn't mean you can't look for avenues to finish, but Rivera is always looking to finish, and he doesn't know when to come off the gas, and I think that's where Stamen is going to have an advantage here. I believe that Stamen, who is a phenomenal wrestler, who is mostly a point striker, but a phenomenal wrestler, is going to be able to get a hold of Rivera and keep him down and just burn out the heat of Rivera. I think he's going to tire him out. I think he's going to frustrate Rivera where he's going to start making mistakes, and if he doesn't connect, that's when the Spartan Stamen is going to take over, and he's going to pick up a win. Now, Rivera does have a 4-inch reach advantage, but both these guys are of smaller stature, so they're about equal, 5'4" and 5'6", but that 4-inch reach advantage of Rivera could be enough to potentially keep Stamen off of him. We'll see how it plays out, though. I am going to go with the Spartan, though, Cody Stamen. All right, in a solid ladies flyweight matchup, we're going to have the Meatball Molly McCann taking on Talia Santos. And so in this one here, I like the Meatball. She's a great fighter, but I actually am going to go with the slightly newer product, Talia Santos. She is 15-1, not to say anything against McCann, who is 10-2, but I think that Santos can get it done here. I think that she's going to improve since her loss to Morella Barella, and it's the size I think that's going to come into play here as well. Molly McCann, 5'4", 62-inch reach. We got a 68-inch reach in Santos, and so if she could sit behind the jab and throw it up all night, I think that she's going to give McCann a problem. We also have seen halfway decent takedown defense out of Santos, where if McCann does try to get to the mat, I think Santos will be able to keep her off of her, and I think that Santos has a nice clear shot to victory through the stand-up game, taking advantage of that great reach advantage. So I am going to go with Talia Santos in this one to pick up a win over the Meatball. All right, we're going to skip over a few on the card here. We'll get to the debuters at the end, but we're going down to Ricardo Ramos and Laron Murphy. In this one here, it is close. Not all of my metrics pick the same fighter, but the majority of them go with Ramos in this one. So I think it could come down to the what looks like superior striking and superior striking output of Ramos. But Laron Murphy does look like a real stellar product coming out of the UK, and I think that he could potentially provide an upset here and end up picking up a win. He has a good submission game, he has decent striking, and I know the numbers do side with Ramos, but this one I am going to give a grain of salt since it's not a 100% pick across the board. We are going to Ricardo Ramos, but take it with a grain of salt. All right, the next one here, we're going to have Jared Gordon take on Chris Fishgold. So in this one, we had Chris Fishgold pick up a loss here to Amirkhani, which I was a little surprised about at the time. It seems like I can't really pick Amirkhani lately these days, but I think that he is going to be able to outdo Gordon here on the mat, And as long as he can stay off of his huge striking output, I think he has a nice clear-cut path to victory. Chris Fishgold is no joke if it gets to the ground, and it's only the best of the best, your Americanis in the world that are going to be able to deal with that, whereas I don't think Gordon can. I think that he's going to honestly be taken down, and I think that he's going to have a difficult time playing with the submission specialist in Fishgold. So we are going Chris Fishgold to pick up a win in this featherweight matchup. All right, and the last one here before we get to the debuters, we have Diana Belbita taking on Liana Jojua. And in this one here, I am going to go with Belbita. She has, they both lost in the UFC in their first outings. I think that Belbita looked a little bit better against McCann than Jua looked against Morris, and so I am going to go with Belbita in this one. She has much better stats as well as far as striking and takedown defense. So that takes us on to the debuters. So I'm going to go over these guys real quick here since we don't have as much information. We're going to have Abdul Razik Al Hassan take on Monir Laez or Laziz. I'm not sure exactly, but I have Abdul in that one. Bear in mind, he did not make weight, but Al Hassan is the pick. The next one, we're going to have John Phillips take on Kazmet Chimaev, and this one I have Chimaev. And the next one we have Modestas Bakaukis taking on Andreas Michailidis. In this one I have Bakaukis, and around things out we have Jack Shore, Aaron Phillips, and in that one I have Jack Shore. So to go over them one more time, we have Ige, Elliott, Stamen, Santos, Ramos, Fishgold, Belbita, Al Hassan, Chimaev, Bakaukis, and Shore to round things out. All right, so these picks are for tomorrow. Keep that in mind. There will be a post going up on the Patreon very, very soon for the picks that I like best. And so you will be hearing from me again soon as well, because we also have a card on Saturday. So I'll make sure we get those out again as quickly as we can. Weeks like this are very jammed-packed for me with the rest of my schedule, but I'm still working on getting them out to you. I also have some liquor reviews I need to do as well, because I have some nice stuff that's kind of making a backlog for me. So we got a lot of stuff coming at us fast and furious. I'll be here to provide you with all the best picks. You just sit there and keep on listening, and until I speak with you again, happy fight picking.